The icy wind blew across the quiet streets, carrying the chill of winter into every corner of the small, sleepy neighborhood. Snowflakes drifted gently from the sky, dusting the rooftops and covering the ground in a pristine white blanket. It was the kind of evening when most people stayed indoors, seeking warmth and comfort by their fires. For Maria, who lived alone in her quaint house at the edge of the neighborhood, this was her favorite time of day, a moment of peace amidst the stillness of winter. Inside her cozy home, Maria was finishing her evening routine. She placed a kettle on the stove, waiting for the water to boil for her favorite herbal tea. The soft glow of the fireplace illuminated her small living room, casting long shadows on the walls lined with shelves of books and photographs. She glanced at one particular photo, a snapshot of her and her late husband standing by a lake, both of them smiling brightly. Though her days were quieter now, Maria found solace in tending to her small garden and watching the world go by from her window. As she carried her tea to the armchair by the window, Maria noticed something unusual. Through the frosted glass, she spotted a small figure moving near her porch. It was low to the ground, darting nervously back and forth. Squinting to get a better look, she realized it was a cat. A thin, scruffy one with a desperate air about it. Setting her cup down, Maria grabbed her coat and carefully opened the door. The cat froze, its wide eyes fixed on her, the wind ruffling its fur. It let out a plaintive meow, a sound so pitiful that Maria felt her heart ache. "Oh, you poor thing," she said softly, kneeling to get a closer look. The cat didn't move, but its gaze remained locked on her, as though pleading for help. Its frail body and protruding ribs told Maria everything she needed to know. It hadn't eaten in a long time. Maria hesitated, unsure if the animal would trust her. She decided to step back inside and return with a small bowl of milk and a few scraps of cooked chicken. Placing the food just outside the door, she retreated, leaving it open enough to watch what would happen next. The cat sniffed the air cautiously before stepping forward, its movements hesitant but determined. It approached the bowl, its delicate frame shaking slightly, and began to eat with a fervor that broke Maria's heart. As the cat finished the food, it looked up at Maria, its wide eyes filled with something she couldn't quite place. Gratitude, perhaps, or hope. Maria smiled softly, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. "You're welcome, little one," she said. "You can stay here if you need to." To her surprise, the cat didn't run away. Instead, it moved closer to the door, stopping just short of crossing the threshold. Maria took a step back, giving it space, and the cat cautiously entered her home. It curled up near the fireplace, its thin body trembling slightly but seeming more at ease. Maria fetched an old blanket and placed it near the hearth. "There you go," she said gently. "That's a bit better, isn't it?" As she settled back into her chair, Maria kept an eye on her unexpected guest. She noticed something odd about the way the cat moved, carefully, as though protecting something. It wasn't until the cat shifted its position near the fire that Maria realized what it was. The cat's belly was slightly rounded, its movements deliberate in a way that suggested it wasn't just malnourished, it was carrying kittens. Maria's breath caught in her throat. "You're not just looking out for yourself," she murmured. "You've got little ones to think about." The realization filled Maria with both sadness and determination. She had taken in stray animals before, but this felt different. This wasn't just about offering a meal or a warm place to sleep. This was about giving a mother and her unborn kittens a chance. As the evening wore on, the cat grew more comfortable, stretching out on the blanket and closing its eyes. Maria watched it with a sense of wonder and purpose she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, her home didn't feel quite so quiet. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside, a new chapter was beginning. A small but significant connection between a woman seeking companionship and a stray cat fighting to survive. The following morning, Maria awoke to the soft sound of purring. She rubbed her eyes and looked toward the fireplace where the cat lay curled up on the blanket. For a moment, she wondered if the previous night had been a dream, but the sight of the little stray confirmed it had been very real. "Good morning," Maria said softly as she rose from her bed. The cat stirred, lifting its head to blink at her with sleepy eyes. It yawned, revealing tiny, sharp teeth, and stretched its thin legs before settling back into the warmth of the fire. Maria busied herself in the kitchen, her mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. She couldn't shake the image of the cat's rounded belly, a telltale sign that it wasn't just fending for itself. It needed proper care, and soon. She prepared a small dish of milk and some soft bread, setting it near the cat's blanket. As Maria placed the food down, the cat sniffed the air and cautiously approached. "You've got a big responsibility, don't you?" Maria murmured, watching as the cat ate with the same urgency as before. "Don't worry, you're safe here." Over the next few days, the cat began to trust Maria more. It followed her around the house, its curious eyes watching as she went about her daily routines. Maria found herself talking to the cat as if it were an old friend, sharing stories and humming softly as she worked. The companionship filled a void in her heart she hadn't realized was so deep. On the third day, Maria decided it was time to name her new guest. "I can't keep calling you little one," she said with a smile as the cat rubbed against her leg. After a moment of thought, she settled on Mimi. The name seemed to suit her, soft, sweet, and full of charm. As the bond between them grew, Maria noticed that Mimi was becoming more comfortable. She often curled up on the old armchair or sat by the window, her ears twitching at the sounds of the outside world. Yet, there was a persistent urgency in the way Mimi acted, as though she were waiting for something, or someone. One snowy afternoon, as Maria prepared a cup of tea, Mimi began pacing near the door, letting out small, insistent meows. Maria turned to see the cat scratching lightly at the wooden frame, her tail flicking back and forth. "What is it, Mimi?" Maria asked, setting down her cup. She approached the door, her curiosity piqued. When she opened it, Mimi darted outside into the cold, her movements quick and purposeful. Alarmed, Maria grabbed her coat and followed. Mimi led Maria across the snow-covered yard and into a wooded area behind the house. The wind bit at Maria's cheeks as she struggled to keep up, her boots crunching loudly in the snow. "Where are you taking me?" she called out, her voice carrying through the stillness of the forest. After a few minutes, Mimi stopped near a hollowed-out tree, her meows growing louder. Maria caught up, her breath visible in the icy air, and knelt down to see what had captured Mimi's attention. Inside the hollow, nestled in a makeshift bed of leaves and twigs, were 3 tiny kittens. Maria's heart melted at the sight. The kittens were so small, their eyes barely open, their fur matted and thin. They let out faint squeaks as Mimi nuzzled them, her maternal instincts on full display. "Oh, Mimi," Maria whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "You've been trying to take care of them all on your own." She realized now why Mimi had been so desperate for food and shelter. It wasn't just for herself, she had been gathering strength for her babies. Maria carefully reached out, her hands trembling as she scooped up the tiny kittens. Mimi watched her intently but didn't resist, as if she understood that Maria meant no harm. Carrying the kittens close to her chest, Maria turned back toward the house, with Mimi trotting at her side. "Don't worry," Maria said softly. "We'll take care of them together." Back at the cabin, Maria set up a cozy spot near the fireplace, with soft blankets and a small box to keep the kittens warm. Mimi curled up beside them, her purring louder than ever as she licked each one in turn. Maria watched the scene with a mixture of awe and gratitude, feeling as though fate had brought them all together. As the kittens settled into their new home, Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just providing for herself anymore. She was part of something bigger, something that reminded her of the profound connections that could be found in even the smallest acts of kindness. The days that followed were a flurry of activity and quiet joy. Maria quickly learned the delicate routine of caring for the kittens. Their tiny cries filled the house as they wriggled about on the blanket-lined box near the fireplace. Mimi, ever the attentive mother, stayed close to them, grooming and nursing them with unwavering devotion. Maria took it upon herself to provide everything Mimi and her babies needed. She purchased kitten formula, soft bedding, and even a small scratching post, creating a cozy corner in her home that soon became their sanctuary. Though the work was tiring, it filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She marveled at the way life had a way of presenting unexpected blessings, even in the harshest of seasons. One snowy afternoon, Maria sat by the fire with a warm cup of tea, watching the kittens as they napped. They were growing stronger each day, their once thin frames filling out, their fur now soft and shiny. Their playful antics brought a smile to Maria's face. One of them, the boldest of the three, had already begun exploring beyond the blanket, its tiny paws tapping against the wooden floor as it ventured toward her. "You're a brave little one, aren't you?" Maria said, reaching out to let the kitten climb onto her lap. Its tiny claws clung to her sweater as it let out a squeaky meow. Mimi watched from her spot near the hearth, her green eyes half closed but alert. It was as if she trusted Maria completely, knowing her babies were safe in her care. As Maria stroked the kitten's soft fur, her thoughts wandered to how this unexpected chapter had changed her life. Before Mimi had appeared on her porch, the days had felt long and uneventful. Now, her home was filled with life, warmth, and the kind of joy that came from caring for others. She realized that in saving Mimi and her kittens, she had also saved herself from the quiet solitude that had settled over her life. Despite the joy, there were challenges. The kittens were still fragile, and Maria worried constantly about their health. One evening, the smallest of the litter seemed particularly weak, refusing to nurse and barely moving. Maria's heart sank as she carefully cradled the tiny creature, its faint breath warming her palm. "It's okay, little one," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're going to get you through this." Mimi watched closely as Maria prepared a bottle of kitten formula. She gently coaxed the kitten to drink, her hands steady despite the lump in her throat. Hours passed as Maria stayed by its side, feeding it drop by drop until it finally showed signs of improvement. When the kitten let out a faint meow and snuggled into her hand, Maria felt a wave of relief so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "You're a fighter," she said softly, "just like your mama." That night, as the kitten slept soundly beside Mimi, Maria sat by the fire, reflecting on how much her life had changed in such a short time. She thought about the first night Mimi had appeared, a desperate figure in the snow, and how that simple act of opening her door had led to this, a home filled with love and hope. Word of Maria's new housemates soon spread through the neighborhood. A kind neighbor, Mrs. Turner, stopped by one morning with a bag of cat food and a knitted blanket for the kittens. "I heard you've got quite the little family now," she said with a smile. "They're lucky to have you." Maria chuckled, glancing at Mimi, who was perched on the windowsill, her tail curling around her paws. "I think I'm the lucky one," she replied. As the days turned into weeks, the kittens grew more adventurous, their tiny paws exploring every corner of Maria's home. Their playful energy was infectious, and even Mimi seemed more relaxed, often lounging in Maria's lap while the kittens tumbled around them. One evening, as Maria watched the kittens chase each other across the living room, she realized something profound. Mimi had come to her not just out of desperation, but out of trust. The cat had chosen her, sensing a kindness and a willingness to help. And in return, Mimi and her kittens had brought Maria a sense of joy and connection she hadn't known she needed. That night, as the snow fell softly outside, Maria sat by the fire with Mimi curled in her lap and the kittens nestled beside her. The warmth of the fire, the soft purring of the cats, and the quiet peace of the moment filled her heart. She realized that this small, unexpected family had given her life a new purpose, reminding her of the simple but profound power of compassion. Outside, the cold winter night stretched on, but inside Maria's home there was only warmth, a sanctuary created by one act of kindness and the bond it had forged. Winter's icy grip began to loosen as the days grew longer, and Maria found herself marveling at how much had changed in such a short time. The kittens were thriving, their once fragile bodies now strong and full of energy. They chased each other across the living room, tumbling over blankets and darting under furniture with boundless enthusiasm. Their playful antics filled the house with laughter, a sound Maria hadn't heard in years. Mimi, ever the attentive mother, still kept a watchful eye on her little ones, but she had also grown more relaxed, often curling up in Maria's lap as the kittens played. Maria cherished these quiet moments, her hand resting gently on Mimi's soft fur as they watched the fire together. The bond between them had deepened into something unspoken but undeniable, a connection built on trust and gratitude. One afternoon, Maria decided to take Mimi and the kittens outside for the first time. The snow had melted, revealing patches of green grass and early spring blooms. She carried the kittens in a small basket, with Mimi trotting close behind, and set them down in the sunny corner of her garden. The kittens hesitated at first, their tiny noses twitching as they sniffed the unfamiliar air. But soon their curiosity took over, and they began exploring with the same fearless energy that had filled Maria's home. Mimi, however, stayed close to Maria, her green eyes scanning the garden as if ensuring it was safe for her babies. Maria knelt beside her, scratching behind her ears. "You've done such a good job," she said softly. "They're lucky to have you." Mimi let out a low, contented purr, leaning into Maria's touch. It was a small but profound gesture, one that spoke volumes about the bond they had formed. For Maria, the moment was bittersweet. She knew that one day the kittens would be ready for new homes, and her little family would grow smaller. But for now, she was determined to savor every moment they had together. As the kittens played in the garden, Maria's neighbor, Mrs. Turner, stopped by with a basket of her own. "I brought some treats for your furry friends," she said with a smile, holding up a bag of cat toys and a few tins of food. "And I might know a family or two who'd love to adopt one of the kittens when the time comes." Maria's heart ached at the thought of parting with the kittens, but she nodded, knowing it was the right thing to do. "They deserve good homes," she said, "but it'll be hard to say goodbye." Mrs. Turner placed a reassuring hand on Maria's shoulder. "You've given them the best start they could have hoped for," she said, "and something tells me Mimi isn't going anywhere." Maria chuckled, glancing at Mimi, who was now lying in the sun, her eyes half closed as she watched her kittens. "No, I think she's decided this is her home." That evening, As the sun set and the kittens napped in their basket by the fire, Maria found herself reflecting on how much joy they had brought into her life. Her once quiet home was now filled with life and love, and she felt a sense of gratitude she hadn't known was missing. She thought about the day Mimi had appeared on her porch, a scruffy, starving stray with a silent plea for help in her eyes. Maria hadn't hesitated to open her door, and in doing so she had gained more than she could have imagined. Mimi and her kittens had reminded her of the power of kindness, the beauty of unexpected connections, and the simple joys that could transform a life. Looking down at Mimi, who was curled up beside her with the kittens nestled close, Maria smiled. "Thank you for choosing me," she whispered. "You've made this house a home again." As spring unfolded in full bloom, Maria knew the time had come to find loving homes for the kittens. They were no longer the tiny, fragile creatures she had first cradled, but energetic bundles of joy, each with a personality as unique as their markings. The thought of parting with them tugged at her heart, but she understood that they deserved families who could give them all the attention and care they needed. With a mix of sadness and hope, Maria reached out to friends and neighbors. Word spread quickly, and soon kind-hearted people came to meet the kittens. One by one, they found new homes. The boldest kitten went to a family with 2 children eager for a playmate. The shy one found solace with an elderly couple who cherished its gentle nature. And the smallest, the fighter Maria had nursed back to health, was adopted by a young woman who saw in it a kindred spirit. On the day the last kitten left, Maria stood on her porch, waving goodbye as the new owner drove away. Mimi sat beside her, watching the car disappear down the lane. Maria felt a pang of emptiness, but also a sense of fulfillment. She had given them the best start possible, and now they would bring joy to others just as they had to her. Turning to Mimi, Maria smiled softly. "Well, it's just us now," she said. Mimi looked up at her with those wise green eyes and let out a soft meow, as if to say she understood. Together, they went back inside the house that, despite the quiet, still felt warm and full of life. In the weeks that followed, Maria and Mimi settled into a comfortable routine. They spent mornings in the garden, where Maria tended to her flowers while Mimi lounged in the sun, occasionally chasing a butterfly or two. Afternoons were for reading by the fireplace or napping in the cozy armchair that had become Mimi's favorite spot. The companionship they shared was easy and natural, filling Maria's days with contentment. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, Maria received a surprise visit. It was the young woman who had adopted the smallest kitten. She held a basket, and from it peeked the familiar face of the little feline. "I thought you might like to see how well he's doing," the woman said with a bright smile. Maria's eyes lit up as she gently stroked the kitten's soft fur. "Oh, you've grown so much," she exclaimed. Mimi approached cautiously, sniffing the kitten before giving it a gentle lick. It was a joyful reunion that warmed Maria's heart. As the woman prepared to leave, she handed Maria a small envelope. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "Not just for the kitten, but for inspiring me. Your kindness made me realize how much joy animals bring into our lives." After she left, Maria opened the envelope to find a handwritten note and a photo of the kitten in his new home. The words expressed gratitude and spoke of the happiness the kitten had brought into the woman's life. Maria felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her act of kindness had rippled outward, touching others in meaningful ways. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of colors, Maria sat on the porch with Mimi curled up in her lap. She thought about how much had changed since that cold winter night when a desperate stray had appeared at her door. By opening her heart and home, she had found not only companionship but a renewed sense of purpose. Looking down at Mimi, Maria gently scratched behind her ears. "You know," she said softly, "you've changed my life for the better. Thank you for choosing me." Mimi purred contentedly, her eyes closing as she nestled closer. The quiet melody of her purring blended with the soft rustling of the leaves, creating a symphony of peace. Maria realized that sometimes the most unexpected encounters could lead to the most profound transformations. She had given Mimi and her kittens a second chance, but they had given her so much more. A heart full of love and a life enriched by the simple joys of caring and connection. If this heartwarming tale of compassion and unexpected friendship touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's spread the message of kindness and the incredible impact it can have on both our lives and those of the animals we help.